Hey everyone, welcome back to my UGC NET Psychology lecture series. Have you ever wondered why two psychologists can study the same human behavior and still come to the completely different conclusion? One psychologist may say human behavior is controlled by unconscious conflicts, another may say behavior is shaped mainly by the environment, while someone else may argue that our thoughts and interpretation play the biggest role. So, who is actually correct? The interesting answer is that each of them is working from a different knowledge paradigm, and this is exactly what we are going to understand in today's UGC NET Psychology lecture. Today we will simplify three very important concepts from Unit 1, that is ontology, epistemology and methodology. These terms may sound difficult and philosophical in the beginning, but once you understand them with simple examples, they become one of the easiest and most interesting topics in psychology. So stay till the end, because by the end of this video, you will clearly understand what ontology means, what epistemology means, what methodology means, how all three are connected, and how questions are asked from this topic in the UGC NET examination. Now imagine you are standing in front of a tree. Different people may look at the same tree in completely different ways. A scientist may ask about its biological structure. An artist may focus on the emotions and beauty the tree creates. A spiritual person may think about the deeper meaning or symbolism of the tree. The tree is the same, but the way of understanding it changes from person to person. The difference in understanding reality forms the basis of what we call a knowledge paradigm. A knowledge paradigm is simply a framework or a lens through which researchers understand reality, knowledge, and human behavior. It helps answer three very important questions. First, what is reality? Second, how can we know reality? And third, how should we study reality? These three questions lead us to ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Let us begin with ontology. Ontology deals with the nature of reality. In the simplest possible words, ontology asks the question, what exists, or what is reality actually like? For example, think about depression. One psychologist may say depression is a real biological disorder caused by chemical imbalances in the brain. Another may argue that depression is shaped by personal experiences, social situations, and cultural meanings. Both are talking about the same phenomenon, but their understanding of reality is different. That difference is ontology. Ontology is basically our assumption about the nature of reality itself. Let us make this even simpler with a daily life example. Imagine two students come out after writing the same exam. One student says the paper was extremely difficult. Another student says no, the paper was actually easy. Now, what is the reality here? Was the paper truly difficult, or does difficulty depend on individual experience? Ontology tries to answer such questions about reality. There are different ontological viewpoints. One important viewpoint is realism. Realism says reality exists independently of us. In simple words, reality exists whether we observe it or not. For example, gravity exists even if nobody believes in it. Similarly, a realist psychologist may say intelligence is a real measurable characteristic that objectively exists in people. Many experimental psychologists and behaviorists followed this kind of thinking because they believed reality can be measured scientifically. Another important viewpoint is relativism. Relativism says reality depends on individual experiences, interpretation, and social context. In simple words, different people can have different realities. For example, one student may experience online classes as very stressful and isolating, while another student may experience them as comfortable and flexible. So, according to relativism, there may not be a single universal reality. Humanistic psychologists and qualitative researchers often support this perspective because they focus on subjective experiences and personal meanings. A very easy trick to remember ontology is this. Ontology is about the nature of reality. You can remember the letter O in ontology as standing for the origin of reality, or simply asking what objectively or subjectively exists. Now let us move to the second concept, that is epistemology. Once we ask what reality is, the next question naturally becomes, how do we know reality? This is where epistemology comes in. Epistemology deals with the nature of knowledge and how knowledge is acquired. In simple words, epistemology asks, how do we know something, or what counts as valid knowledge? For example, psychologists say stress affects physical and mental health. But how do they know this? Do they conduct experiments? Do they interview people? Do they observe behavior? Do they use scientific measurements? All these questions become to epistemology because they deal with the source and validity of knowledge. Suppose a researcher wants to study anxiety among college students. One researcher may say we should scientifically measure anxiety using psychological tests or questionnaires and statistical analysis. Another researcher may say no, we should talk to students and understand their personal feelings and experiences. Both researchers are studying anxiety, but their ways of gaining knowledge are different. That difference is epistemology. One major epistemological viewpoint is positivism. Positivism says knowledge should come from objective observations, scientific methods, experiments, and measurable facts. Positivists believe science is the best way to understand reality. According to this view, researchers should remain neutral and focus only on observable and measurable data. For example, intelligent tests, laboratory experiments, reaction time studies, and surveys are all positive approaches. Behaviorism strongly followed positivism. Think about psychologists like Watson and Skinner. They focus mainly on observable behavior because they believed scientific knowledge must be measurable and objective. Another important viewpoint is interpretivism. Interpretivism says humans cannot always be understood like machines or physical objects because human beings have emotions, meanings, intentions, and personal experiences. According to interpretivists, understanding people requires understanding their subjective experiences. For example, if a person is crying, a positivist researcher may measure how often the person cries or what biological changes occur during crying. But an interpretivist researcher may ask, what does this sadness mean to the individual? Humanistic psychology and phenomenological approaches often follow interpretivism because they focus on understanding lived experiences. Here is another simple daily life example. Imagine your friend says, I'm feeling low today. A positivist may ask questions like, how many hours did you sleep, or what is your stress level? But an interpretivist may ask, what happened, or how are you feeling emotionally? Both are trying to understand the same problem, but they are using different approaches to knowledge, that is epistemology. A simple trick to remember epistemology is this. Epistemology is about knowledge and evidence. The letter E in epistemology can remind you of evidence and explanation. So ontology asks what reality is, while epistemology asks how we gain knowledge about that reality. Now let us move to the third concept, methodology. Once we decide what reality is and how knowledge should be obtained, the next question becomes, how exactly will we conduct the research? This is called methodology. Methodology refers to the overall strategy, procedures, and methods used to study something. In simple words, methodology asks how will we investigate the problem. It includes research designs, tools, techniques, and procedures used for collecting and analyzing data. For example, if a psychologist believes reality is objective and knowledge should be measurable, then the methodology will probably involve experiments, surveys, and statistical analysis. But if a psychologist believes reality is subjective and personal experiences are important, then the methodology may involve interviews, case studies, observations, and qualitative analysis. So, methodology is directly influenced by ontology and epistemology. This relationship among ontology, epistemology, and methodology is extremely important for UGC NET Psychology. Think about it like building a house. Ontology is the foundation because it decides what reality is. Epistemology is the blueprint because it explains how knowledge about reality can be obtained. Methodology is the construction process because it determines how research will actually be carried out. All three are deeply interconnected. Let us understand this connection with one complete example. Suppose a researcher wants to study social media addiction. One researcher may believe social media addiction is a real measurable condition that objectively exists. This is ontology. The same researcher may believe knowledge should come from scientific measurement and objective data. This is epistemology. Therefore, the researcher may use questionnaires, rating scales, and statistical analysis to study social media addiction. This is methodology. Another researcher may believe social media addiction differs from person to person and depends on individual experiences. This is a different ontological assumption. That researcher may believe knowledge comes from understanding people's lived experiences and emotions. This is a different epistemological assumption. Therefore, the methodology may involve interviews and qualitative analysis, so you can clearly see how ontology, epistemology, and methodology are connected with each other. This topic is very important in psychology because psychology studies human beings and humans are extremely complex. Some psychologists believe psychology should function exactly like natural science, focusing only on objective and measurable behavior. Others believe humans' experience are too subjective and meaningful to be reduced only to numbers and statistics. This is why different schools of psychology develop different paradigms. Behaviorism focused heavily on objective measurement and scientific methods. Psychoanalysis focused on unconscious meanings and hidden conflicts. Humanistic psychology emphasized personal experience and self-growth. Cognitive psychology tried to scientifically study method processes. Each school had its own assumptions about reality, knowledge, and research methods. One very common confusion among students is mixing up epistemology and methodology. So remember this sequence very clearly. Ontology asks what is reality. Epistemology asks how do we know reality. Methodology asks how do we study reality. In simple ways, it goes like this: reality, then knowledge, then research method; ontology, then epistemology, then methodology. So today we understood one of the most foundational topics in Unit 1 of UGC NET Psychology, that is ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Initially, these terms sound difficult and philosophical, but once broken into simple questions, they become very easy to understand. Ontology is about reality, epistemology is about knowledge, and methodology is about research procedure. Every psychological theory, every research study is built upon these assumptions, whether directly or indirectly. If you understand this topic properly, many other concepts in Unit 1 become much easier because this topic forms the philosophical base of psychology and research. Before ending the video, think about this question. If you wanted to study happiness, would you scientifically measure it using scales and statistics, or would you try to understand people's personal experiences and emotions through conversation? Your answer itself reveals your epistemological approach, and that is the beauty of psychology. It is not just about studying behavior, but also about understanding different ways of seeing reality and knowledge. Thank you for watching, and keep learning psychology with curiosity and deeper understanding. If you like this video, please do subscribe to my channel.